The stars had been singing their ancient songs for billions of years when Earth finally learned to listen. In the great emptiness of space, civilizations older than mountains ruled over worlds that humans could not even imagine. They called themselves the Galactic Confederacy, and they had been the masters of space for longer than Earth had existed. The Zephyrians were the first to build cities among the stars. Their sleek ships had crossed between worlds for 50,000 years. They looked like tall, thin humans, but with silver skin that reflected light like mirrors. Their voices sounded like wind through crystal caves, and they spoke in whispers that could be heard across entire star systems. The Vorth were even older. These beings were made of living crystal that grew and changed shape as they thought. They had no bodies like humans understood bodies. Instead, they were walking mountains of clear stone that pulsed with inner light. The Vorth remembered when the galaxy was young and hot, when new stars were born every day like flowers in spring. Then there were the Nethic, creatures of gas and energy that lived in the spaces between worlds. They had no solid form at all, but danced through the void, like living storms. The Nethic claimed they were older than matter itself, that they had watched the first atoms come together to make the first worlds. These ancient races and dozens of others ruled the galaxy from the great station called Unity Prime. It was a massive structure built inside a hollow moon, big enough to hold 1 million beings from every corner of space. The Council of Ancients met there in a chamber carved from a single piece of star metal, where decisions were made that affected the lives of trillions. For thousands of generations, the Confederacy had grown slowly and carefully. New members were rare. Most species that developed space travel were watched for centuries before being invited to join. The Council believed that only civilizations that had proven themselves over vast amounts of time could be trusted with the responsibility of galactic citizenship. Then Earth sent its message to the stars. The transmission was crude and simple compared to the elegant communications the Confederacy was used to receiving. It came from a small blue world in a quiet arm of the galaxy, a place so far from the centers of civilization that most maps did not even mark it. The message was short and direct in a way that made the ancient beings uncomfortable. "This is Earth calling. We come in peace. We want to learn and trade with other worlds. Please respond." The Council of Ancients met for 3 full months to discuss this unexpected contact. The Zephyrians argued that any species so young could not possibly be ready for galactic society. The Vorth calculated that humans had only been using metal tools for a few thousand years, which was barely an instant in their long view of time. The Nethic whispered that these creatures from Earth were so new that they still smelled of the dirt they had crawled from, but there were rules even for the ancient races. Any species that achieved faster than light travel on their own had the right to request membership in the Confederacy. It did not matter if they were ready or not. The law was older than most of the civilizations that followed it. So the Council sent a reply to Earth, though they took their time doing it. 6 months passed before the response reached the small blue world. By Confederacy standards, this was lightning-fast communication. By human standards, it was an eternity of waiting. "People of Earth," the message began, "the Galactic Confederacy acknowledges your request for contact. You will be granted probationary membership status, pending evaluation of your species' maturity and development. Report to Unity Prime for processing." The coordinates came with the message, along with basic star charts and a warning that Earth would be held responsible for any damage their primitive technology might cause to more advanced civilizations. Captain Sarah Chun read the message for the 20th time as she stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance. The ship was humanity's pride, the fastest and most advanced vessel they had ever built. To Sarah, it represented everything humans could achieve when they worked together toward a common goal. To the rest of the galaxy, it would probably look like a child's toy. Sarah was 35 years old, which made her middle-aged by human standards but practically an infant by galactic ones. She had grown up dreaming of the stars, reading every book she could find about space exploration. When humanity finally developed faster-than-light travel, she had been among the first to volunteer for deep space missions. The Defiance was not a large ship. It carried a crew of only 200 people, but each one had been chosen carefully. They were scientists, diplomats, engineers, and explorers. Their mission was simple in theory but complex in practice: make contact with galactic civilization and establish Earth as a legitimate member of the interstellar community. "Captain," called Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb from his station. Marcus was Sarah's second-in-command and oldest friend. They had served together for 8 years, through training missions around Earth's solar system and the first tentative flights to nearby stars. "We are approaching the Unity Prime system. Long-range sensors are picking up massive energy signatures." Sarah nodded and walked to the main view screen. What she saw there took her breath away. Unity Prime was not just a station, but an entire artificial world. Thousands of ships moved around it like insects around a glowing flower. Some of the vessels were so large that they could have carried Earth's entire population. Others were so strange in design that Sarah could not even tell which end was the front. "Communications incoming," reported Ensign Patricia Valdez, the ship's communication officer. "They are requesting our identification and purpose." "Open a channel," Sarah ordered. She straightened her uniform and tried to look as professional as possible. This was humanity's first impression on the galactic stage, and she wanted to make it count. The view screen flickered and showed a being that Sarah assumed was Zephyrian. The creature was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Its eyes were large and dark, and when it spoke, its voice had a musical quality that was both beautiful and slightly unsettling. "Primitive vessel, this is Unity Prime Traffic Control. State your business in Confederacy space." Sarah felt her jaw tighten at the word primitive, but she kept her voice calm and professional. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earth. Ship Defiance. We are here in response to the Confederacy's invitation to establish diplomatic relations." Zephyrian's expression did not change, but Sarah thought she detected a hint of amusement in its large eyes. "Ah yes, the probationary members from the young world. You will dock at Station 7, Level 9. Do not deviate from the prescribed flight path. Do not attempt to scan any Confederacy vessels. Do not activate any weapon systems. Failure to comply will result in immediate destruction." The channel closed before Sarah could respond. She looked around the bridge at her crew, all of whom were staring at the view screen with expressions ranging from anger to disbelief. "Friendly bunch?" Marcus muttered under his breath. "They are just being cautious," Sarah replied, though she did not really believe it. "We are strangers here. They do not know what to expect from us." The flight to Station 7 took 2 hours, during which the Defiance was escorted by a pair of Confederacy patrol ships. The vessels were sleek and beautiful, clearly built by beings who valued art as much as function. They moved through space with a grace that made the human ship look clumsy by comparison. Station 7 turned out to be a massive docking facility on the outer edge of Unity Prime. As the Defiance approached its assigned berth, Sarah could see dozens of other ships from species she had never imagined. There were vessels that looked like living creatures, ships made of what appeared to be solid light, and craft so alien in design that she could not even guess how they moved through space. The docking process was handled entirely by automated systems. Mechanical arms reached out from the station and gently guided the Defiance into its berth. As soon as the ship was secured, the station's computer began running detailed scans of the human vessel. "They are examining every inch of our ship," reported Chief Engineer Torres from his station. "Structural analysis, weapon systems, power plant, even our food storage. It is like they are cataloging us." "Let them look," Sarah said. "We have nothing to hide." But as she watched the scan results scroll across her screens, Sarah began to understand what was really happening. The Confederacy was not just examining their ship for security purposes. They were evaluating humanity's technology, determining exactly how primitive their new probationary members really were. An hour later, a delegation of Confederacy officials arrived at the docking tube. Sarah and Marcus went to meet them, along with Dr. Elizabeth Harrison, Earth's best xenobiologist, and Ambassador James Wright, a diplomat with decades of experience in difficult negotiations. The delegation consisted of 3 beings from different species. The leader was a Zephyrian who introduced himself as Administrator Zelf. He was accompanied by a Vorth whose crystal body hummed with inner energy, and a creature that Sarah did not recognize, but that seemed to be made of flowing water held together by some kind of force field. "Welcome to Unity Prime," Administrator Zelf said in his musical voice. "I am here to explain your status as probationary members and the restrictions that apply to your species." He handed Sarah a datapad containing what appeared to be a very long list of rules and regulations. As she scanned through it, her heart sank. Humans were forbidden from entering most areas of Confederacy space. They could not trade in advanced technologies. They could not participate in council meetings except as observers. They could not even communicate directly with most member species without permission from their sponsors. "These restrictions seem quite severe," Ambassador Wright said carefully. "How long will they remain in effect?" The Vorth crystal being pulsed with what might have been amusement. When it spoke, its voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "Your species will be evaluated every 50 standard years. If you show sufficient progress, some restrictions may be lifted. Full membership typically requires a minimum of 500 years of probationary status." 500 years? Dr. Harrison could not keep the shock out of her voice. "But our entire recorded history is less than that." "Exactly," Administrator Zelf replied. "You are a very young species. The Confederacy has learned from experience that young civilizations are unpredictable and often dangerous. These restrictions are for your own protection as much as ours." Sarah felt anger building in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. "What kind of progress would be required for us to advance our status?" "You must demonstrate cultural maturity," the water being answered in a voice like rushing streams. "You must show that you have moved beyond the primitive impulses of violence, territorial expansion, and resource competition. You must prove that you can think beyond the immediate needs of your own species." As the delegation continued to explain humanity's place in the galactic order, Sarah began to understand the true nature of their situation. The Confederacy did not see humans as potential equals or partners. They saw them as children who needed to be watched and controlled until they grew up enough to be trusted with real responsibility. The ancient races had forgotten what it was like to be young and hungry and full of dreams. They had grown comfortable in their power and convinced themselves that age automatically brought wisdom. They looked at humanity's short history and saw only primitiveness, never stopping to consider that being young might also mean being energetic, innovative, and unbound by the weight of tradition. But Sarah and her crew were about to show the galaxy that sometimes the young have advantages that the old have forgotten. Sometimes being new to the game means playing by different rules. And sometimes the student has lessons to teach the master. The meeting ended with the Confederacy officials assigning the Defiants to what they called safe sectors, areas of space that the ancient races considered worthless because they contained no valuable resources or strategic importance. It was busy work designed to keep the humans occupied while preventing them from interfering with more important activities. As Sarah watched the delegation leave her ship, she made a silent promise. Humanity would prove itself worthy of respect, but they would do it on their own terms. The galaxy was about to learn that Earth's children had grown up faster and stronger than anyone expected. And when the time came to show their true strength, the old races would discover that they had seriously underestimated the young world that dared to reach for the stars. 3 months had passed since the Defiance left Unity Prime. Captain Sarah Chun stood in her ready room, staring at the star charts that showed their assigned patrol route. The Confederacy had given humanity access to what they called the Outer Rim sectors, areas of space so far from civilization that most species had forgotten they existed. The ancient races believed these regions held nothing of value. They were wrong. "Captain, you need to see this," Marcus Webb's voice came through the communication system. There was excitement in his tone that Sarah had not heard since they left Earth. Sarah made her way to the bridge quickly. The crew was gathered around the main sensor station, all talking at once. Dr. Harrison was running calculations on her tablet, while Chief Torres examined the engineering readings with wide eyes. "Report," Sarah ordered, and the bridge fell silent. Marcus pointed to the main view screen, which showed a massive nebula stretching across millions of kilometers of space. The gas clouds swirled in beautiful patterns of blue, green, and gold. But that was not what had caught the crew's attention. Long-range sensors detected an artificial structure inside the Kepler Nebula, Marcus explained. The computer ran the signature through our databases 3 times to be sure. "Captain, it is a ship, but not like anything we have ever seen before." Dr. Harrison looked up from her tablet. "The energy readings are incredible. Whatever it is, it has been there for a very long time. Thousands of years, maybe longer. The metal composition does not match any known Confederacy technology." Sarah felt her heart start to beat faster. In all their months of exploring the worthless sectors, they had found nothing but empty space and dead rocks. Now they had discovered something that might be truly important. "Could it be a derelict?" she asked. "The ship appears to be powered down but intact," Torres reported. "No life signs, but the hull is still sound. Whatever built it knew how to make things that last." Sarah walked closer to the view screen. The nebula was beautiful but dangerous. The radiation levels would make it difficult for most ships to operate inside for long periods. That might explain why the Confederacy had never found this vessel before. "Set course for the nebula," she ordered. "But keep us at a safe distance until we know what we are dealing with." The Defiance moved carefully into the outer edges of the gas cloud. The ship's shields glowed as they deflected cosmic radiation and charged particles. On the view screen, the mysterious vessel grew larger and more detailed. It was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the Defiance. The hull was made of a dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols covered its surface, carved deep into the armor plating. The design was unlike anything in the Confederacy databases. "Captain," Ensign Valdez called from her station, "I am detecting faint power readings from the vessel. Something is still active over there?" Dr. Harrison was practically bouncing with excitement. "Do you realize what this could be? The design, the age, the technology. This might be a Forerunner ship." The bridge fell completely silent. Everyone knew about the Forerunners, though most people believed they were just legends. According to Galactic mythology, they were an ancient race that had transcended physical existence millions of years ago. Before they vanished, they had built wonders that made current technology look like stone tools. Finding a real Forerunner ship would be the archaeological discovery of the century. It would revolutionize understanding of galactic history and technology. Most importantly for humanity, it would prove that Earth's explorers could accomplish things that the ancient races had failed to do. "Launch a probe," Sarah ordered. "Full sensor sweep. I want to know everything about that ship before we get any closer." The probe launched and moved carefully toward the derelict vessel. Its sensors began transmitting detailed information about the hull composition, internal structure, and energy patterns. What they found was beyond anything they had imagined. The ship was not just old, it was impossibly advanced. The metal it was made from was stronger than anything in the Confederacy database. The power source was still functioning after thousands of years, using principles that human science could barely understand. And the internal compartments showed signs of technology that defied current physical laws. "This is it," Dr. Harrison whispered. "This is really a Forerunner ship. We have found something that will change everything." Sarah was about to order a full investigation when Ensign Valdez spoke up from her station. "Captain, I am detecting multiple ships approaching from outside the nebula. They are big, and they are coming fast." The view screen switched to show long-range sensors. 5 massive vessels were moving toward the nebula at high speed. Even at this distance, their design was unmistakable. They were Zephyrian battlecruisers. How did they find us so quickly? Marcus asked. They must have been monitoring our communications, Torres replied grimly. Standard procedure for probationary members. Sarah felt cold anger building in her chest. The Confederacy had been watching them, waiting to see if humanity would find anything interesting. Now that the Defiance had made the discovery of a lifetime, the ancient races were moving in to claim it for themselves. Incoming transmission, Valdez reported. The view screen showed the bridge of the lead Zephyrian ship. The being who appeared was tall and imposing, with silver skin that seemed to glow with inner light. His uniform was covered with decorations that marked him as a high-ranking military officer. Human vessel, he said in the musical Zephyrian language. I am Admiral Keffer of the Confederacy fleet. You will withdraw from this area immediately. Sarah stepped forward. This is Captain Chen of the UES Defiance. We are operating within our assigned sector under Confederacy law. We have the right to investigate any discoveries we make. Admiral Keffer's expression showed what might have been amusement. Young species, you do not understand the situation. The vessel you have discovered is of significant archaeological importance. Under Section 847 of the Galactic Heritage Code, all Forerunner artifacts must be claimed by the senior civilization present. Senior civilization? Sarah felt her anger growing. What gives you the right to steal our discovery? The right of age, Keffer replied coldly. The Zephyrian Empire has existed for 50,000 years. Your species has barely learned to leave its home planet. This artifact will be properly studied by beings who have the wisdom and experience to understand its importance. Dr. Harrison moved to stand beside Sarah. With respect, Admiral, this discovery was made by human sensors in a sector assigned to human exploration. International salvage law should apply here. Your primitive laws have no authority in this matter, Keffer said. You will withdraw to a safe distance while we secure the artifact. Any attempt to interfere will be considered an act of aggression. The transmission ended. On the view screen, the Zephyrian ships were moving into attack formation around the nebula. Their weapon systems were powering up, and their shields were beginning to glow with energy. They are actually going to steal it, Marcus said in disbelief. They are going to take our discovery, and there is nothing we can do about it. Sarah stared at the Zephyrian ships. The Defiance was outnumbered 5-1 by vessels that were much larger and more heavily armed. In a straight fight, humanity's first deep spaceship would be destroyed in minutes, but Sarah Shun had not come this far to back down from a fight, especially when the fight was over something that belonged to her crew by right of discovery. All hands, this is the captain, she announced over the ship's communication system. We have made the greatest archaeological discovery in galactic history. An alien force is trying to steal it from us using threats and superior firepower. I want everyone to know that we are not going to let that happen. She turned to Marcus. Signal the Zephyrian ships. Tell them we refuse to withdraw. Captain, Dr. Harrison said quietly, they will destroy us. Maybe, Sarah replied. But sometimes standing up for what is right is more important than survival. If we back down now, humanity will never be respected in this galaxy. We will always be the young species that runs away when the older children want our toys. The response came quickly. Admiral Keffer appeared on the view screen again, and this time his expression showed real anger. Captain Chin, you are making a serious mistake. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. We claim this discovery under human law, Sarah replied firmly. We will not abandon our find to thieves who use age as an excuse for robbery. Keffer's silver skin seemed to darken. Very well, you have chosen your fate. The transmission ended. A moment later, the lead Zephyrian ship fired a blast of energy that passed just over the Defiance's hull. The shot was a warning, but it was close enough to make the human ship shake from the energy discharge. Warning shot, Marcus reported. They are trying to scare us off. Hold position, Sarah ordered. Continue scanning the Forerunner ship. We came here to make discoveries, and that is what we are going to do. The second shot was closer. It passed just meters from the Defiance's starboard side, close enough to overload several sensor panels. The bridge lights flickered as the ship's systems dealt with the electromagnetic pulse. "Captain," Torres called from his station, "if they keep shooting that close, they are going to hit us by accident." Sarah was about to respond when the third shot struck the Defiance directly. The blast tore through the ship's hull like it was made of paper. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the vessel as atmosphere began venting into space. The lights went out on half the bridge, and several crew members were thrown to the floor. "Damage report!" Sarah shouted over the noise. "Hull. Breach on deck 7, Torres replied, his voice tight with shock. "Emergency bulkheads are sealing, but we have lost life support to that entire section." Dr. Harrison was helping Ensign Valdez, who had been thrown against her console and was bleeding from a head wound. "Medical teams to deck 7 immediately," she called. But Sarah knew it was too late for some of her crew. Deck 7 contained the ship's secondary computer core and several laboratories. 12 people had been working in that section when the Zephyrian shot tore through the hull. Marcus was checking his console with shaking hands. "Captain, Deck 7 is completely sealed off. No life signs. They are all gone." Sarah felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. Commander Marcus Webb was more than her second in command. He was her oldest friend. They had served together for 8 years through training missions and exploration flights. He had been the one person she could always count on. Now he was dead, killed by aliens who thought humans were too young and primitive to deserve respect. The Zephyrian ships moved closer to the nebula, ignoring the crippled human vessel. Admiral Kethver's ships began deploying salvage equipment toward the Forerunner derelict, preparing to claim it as their prize. But Kethver had made a mistake that would cost him everything. He had underestimated what humans were capable of when they were pushed too far. He had killed Sarah's crew and stolen their discovery, then left them to die in the radiation storms of the nebula. What he did not understand was that he had just declared war on a species that had climbed to the top of their world's food chain by being the most dangerous predators their planet had ever produced. He had shed human blood and left witnesses to tell the story. Sarah Chen stared at the Zephyrian ships through the viewscreen as her crew fought to repair their damaged vessel. She was no longer thinking about diplomacy or following Confederacy rules. She was thinking about justice and revenge and showing the galaxy that humanity was not as helpless as everyone believed. The ancient races thought they could push the young species around because humans were new to space and had small ships with primitive weapons. They were about to learn that being young also meant being hungry, being angry, and being willing to fight for what belonged to them. Admiral Kethver had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. He had turned humanity's first contact mission into something much more dangerous. He had created an enemy that would not stop until justice was served, no matter how long it took or how much it cost. The war between old and young had begun, and the galaxy was about to discover which side had the stronger will to fight. The journey back to Earth took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of limping through space in a damaged ship, breathing recycled air that still smelled of smoke and death. 6 weeks of memorial services for 12 crew members who would never see home again. 6 weeks for Captain Sarah Chun to think about what Admiral Kethver had done to her people. The Defiance looked like a wounded animal when it finally reached Earth orbit. Black scorch marks covered the hull where the Zephyrian energy blast had torn through the metal. Emergency patches sealed the hole in Deck 7, but everyone could see the damage. The proud ship that had left Earth as humanity's ambassador to the stars had returned as a victim of alien aggression. Sarah stood in the shuttle bay, watching as the bodies of her crew were transferred to Earth vessels for burial. Each coffin was draped with the flag of the United Earth Space Command. 12 flags, 12 friends. 12 people who had died because an alien admiral thought humans were too young to deserve respect. Commander Marcus Webb's coffin was the last to leave the ship. Sarah placed her hand on the metal surface and made a silent promise. Marcus had believed in humanity's future among the stars. He had died trying to protect humanity's greatest discovery. His death would not be meaningless. The data cores from the Defiance were rushed to Earth's best scientists and engineers. Every scan of the Forerunner ship, every recording of the Zephyrian attack, every detail of Confederacy technology that the crew had observed during their mission. Within hours, the information was being studied by thousands of the brightest minds on Earth, but it was the video recordings that changed everything. Sarah had ordered every moment of the confrontation to be recorded. The footage showed Admiral Kethver's arrogant dismissal of human rights. It showed the warning shots that came closer and closer to the Defiance. It showed the moment when the Zephyrian Admiral decided that human lives meant nothing compared to his desire for ancient artifacts. The recording spread across Earth's communication networks like wildfire. Every human alive watched the moment when their species' first diplomatic mission turned into a massacre. They saw their people murdered by aliens who treated them like children playing with toys that belonged to adults. The reaction was swift and terrible. Earth's government had been hoping for peaceful integration into galactic society. They had planned to spend decades learning from older civilizations, slowly building relationships and earning respect through patient diplomacy. Those plans died with the crew of Deck 7. President Martinez addressed the planet from the steps of the United Nations building in New York. Her words were carried to every human settlement on Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies. Citizens of Earth, she began, her voice calm but filled with steel. Today we learned that the galaxy is not the peaceful community we hope to join. Today we learned that some civilizations believe age gives them the right to murder and steal. Today we learned that our children will never be safe among the stars unless we have the strength to protect them. The president's next words would be remembered for generations. Effective immediately, Earth is withdrawing from all Confederacy agreements. We will not bow to those who shed our blood. We will not accept their judgment that we are too young to deserve justice. Starting today, humanity stands alone among the stars, and we will show the galaxy what that means. What followed was the greatest mobilization in human history. Every shipyard on Earth and Mars was converted to military production. Asteroid mining stations began extracting metals for warship hulls. Research facilities that had been studying peaceful applications of alien technology were redirected to developing weapon systems. Universities canceled regular classes and focused their efforts on military engineering, but humanity did not simply try to copy Confederacy technology. Human engineers studied the recorded scans of Zephyrian ships and asked a different question. Instead of wondering how to build the same weapons, they asked how to defeat them. Dr. Elizabeth Harrison led a team of scientists in analyzing every detail of the Zephyrian energy weapons. They discovered that the alien blasters used exotic matter contained in magnetic bottles to create their destructive beams. The technology was elegant and efficient, but it had weaknesses that the ancient races had never bothered to address. They have been using the same basic design for thousands of years, Dr. Harrison explained to the Military Planning Committee. They perfected it and then stopped innovating. We can build countermeasures. Human weapons designers took a completely different approach. Instead of exotic matter and energy beams, they focused on kinetic weapons. Railguns that could accelerate chunks of metal to incredible speeds. Missile systems that could turn asteroids into planet-killing projectiles. Nuclear warheads designed to detonate inside enemy ships. After penetrating their energy shields, the Confederacy had grown comfortable with their advanced technology. They built ships with powerful shields that could stop energy weapons and exotic matter, but they had not prepared for enemies who would throw rocks at them at near light speed. Chief Engineer Torres, promoted to head of Earth's new weapons development program, worked 80-hour days designing humanity's first true warships. His team studied every weakness in Confederacy technology and built systems specifically designed to exploit them. Zephyrian ships rely on harmonic frequencies to maintain their energy shields, he explained to Admiral Elena Vasquez, Sarah's former instructor who had been given command of Earth's new military forces. If we can disrupt those frequencies, their shields will collapse. I can build generators that will turn their own technology against them. Admiral Vasquez was a woman who had spent her career preparing for threats that Earth's leaders hoped would never come. She was 60 years old, with gray hair and scars from combat training exercises. More importantly, she understood that this war would not be won by following the rules that other civilizations expected. The Confederacy fights according to ancient codes of honor, she told her staff officers. They announce their attacks, fight in formation, and give their enemies time to surrender. We are not going to do any of that. We are going to fight like humans. What that meant became clear as Earth's new fleet began to take shape. The ships were smaller than Confederacy vessels but faster and more maneuverable. They were designed to work in groups, supporting each other and striking from unexpected directions. Most importantly, they were built to be expendable. Human commanders were trained to sacrifice their ships if it meant destroying larger enemy vessels. The psychological warfare began even before the first shot was fired. Earth's intelligence services, led by former corporate hackers and military cryptographers, began infiltrating Confederacy communication networks. They did not try to steal military secrets. Instead, they spread the recordings of Admiral Kethver's attack throughout the galaxy. Every species in the Confederacy saw the footage of the Defiance being destroyed. They watched human crew members die for the crime of making a scientific discovery. They heard Kethver's arrogant dismissal of human rights and his claim that age gave him the authority to commit murder. The reaction was not what the Zephyrians expected. Many younger species began to question whether the Confederacy really represented justice and peace. Some of the older races started to worry about what kind of enemy they had created by attacking the humans. But Kethver and his supporters dismissed these concerns. Humans were a young species with primitive technology. They had small ships and simple weapons. Even if they were angry, what could they possibly do against the combined might of the Confederacy? The answer came 6 months after the Defiance returned to Earth. The first Zephyrian outpost to disappear was a small research station studying stellar phenomena in an uninhabited system. The facility simply went silent one day, with no distress signal and no explanation. When a Confederacy patrol arrived to investigate, they found nothing but floating debris and radiation signatures that made no sense. The second attack was more dramatic. A Zephyrian supply depot was destroyed by what appeared to be a meteor shower. Hundreds of small objects struck the facility at incredible speeds, turning buildings and spacecraft into twisted metal. The kinetic energy released was equivalent to several nuclear weapons, but there was no radiation or exotic matter residue that would indicate advanced weapons had been used. It took the Confederacy 3 more attacks to realize they were at war. The human ships appeared out of nowhere, struck with devastating force, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. They did not announce themselves or demand surrender. They simply destroyed their targets and disappeared into the void. The attacks followed no pattern that Confederacy strategists could predict, and the weapons used were unlike anything in their databases. Admiral Kethver was recalled to Unity Prime to explain how a primitive species with a handful of small ships could be causing so much damage to Confederacy infrastructure. He stood before the Council of Ancients in the great chamber carved from star metal, trying to maintain his dignity while admitting that he had seriously underestimated the humans. "They do not fight like civilized beings," he reported to the assembled leaders. "They strike without warning, use crude weapons that somehow penetrate our defenses, and retreat before we can respond. Their tactics violate every principle of honorable warfare." The Vorth representative, a massive crystal being that pulsed with inner light, spoke in its grinding voice. "Perhaps you should not have attacked their ship without proper provocation." Kethver's silver skin darkened with anger. "They refused a lawful order from a senior civilization. I was within my rights to use force. You killed 12 beings who were conducting peaceful exploration," the Nethic delegate whispered like wind through empty spaces. "Now their species seeks vengeance. What did you expect?" The debate continued for days, but no solution emerged. The Confederacy had never faced an enemy like humanity before. Previous conflicts had been fought between civilizations that followed the same basic rules: formal declarations of war, scheduled battles, negotiated surrenders. The humans ignored all of these traditions and fought like wild animals defending their territory. Meanwhile, Earth's war machine continued to grow. New ships rolled out of the orbital shipyards every week. Soldiers trained in combat techniques that emphasized speed, aggression, and surprise attacks. Scientists developed weapons that turned the galaxy's own physics against the Confederacy's advanced technology. Captain Sarah Chun was given command of the rebuilt UAS Defiance II, a ship designed specifically for hunting Zephyrian vessels. The new Defiance was faster than her predecessor and armed with weapons that could punch through energy shields like they were made of glass. But more importantly, she carried a crew that had volunteered for a mission that everyone understood might be suicide. "We are not fighting to conquer the galaxy," Sarah told her officers during their first mission briefing. "We are fighting to teach the galaxy that humanity will not be pushed around. Every Zephyrian ship we destroy sends a message. Every outpost we eliminate proves that age does not automatically mean wisdom." The hunt for Admiral Kethver had begun. Unknown to the Confederacy, human intelligence had been tracking the Admiral's movements since the day the Defiance returned to Earth. They knew which ships he commanded, which routes he traveled, and which systems he considered safe. Earth's hackers had infiltrated Zephyrian communication networks so thoroughly that they often knew Kethver's orders before his own crew did. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. False intelligence was fed to Confederacy networks suggesting that humans were planning to attack a major military base in the Rigel system. Kethver took command of a task force to defend the installation, believing he would finally have a chance to crush the human rebellion. Instead, he would discover that the young species he had dismissed as primitive had learned to hunt their enemies with the patience and cunning of apex predators. The galaxy was about to witness what happened when humanity stopped trying to be diplomatic and started fighting to win. The war between old and young was entering its deadliest phase, and Admiral Kethver was about to learn that some lines should never be crossed. Admiral Kethver stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory, watching the empty space around the Rigel defense station. His task force consisted of 15 of the most powerful warships in the Zephyrian fleet, enough firepower to destroy entire planets. According to intelligence reports, the humans were planning their largest attack yet on this facility, but the attack never came. For 3 days, Kethver's ships waited in formation around the military base. Sensors swept the surrounding space constantly, looking for any sign of human vessels. Long-range patrols searched nearby systems for enemy forces. The Admiral grew more frustrated with each passing hour. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "Command is asking for a status update. They want to know when you will engage the human forces." Kethver's silver skin darkened with anger. "Tell them the humans are cowards. They probably detected our presence and fled back to whatever hole they crawled out of." What the Admiral did not know was that Captain Sarah Chun and her strike force were already hunting him. The Rigel system attack had been a deception, designed to draw Kethver away from his normal patrol routes and into a position where the humans could isolate him from reinforcements, while the Zephyrian Admiral waited for an attack that would never come. Human ships were systematically destroying his support network. Supply convoys disappeared without sending distress signals. Communication relays went offline one by one. Patrol vessels that ventured too far from the main fleet simply vanished into the darkness of space. The humans had learned patience from their prey. They watched and waited, gathering intelligence about Zephyrian fleet movements and identifying weaknesses in their formations. Earth's hackers had penetrated so deeply into Confederacy networks that they could track individual ships across the galaxy in real time. "Target acquired," reported Lieutenant Commander Torres from his position at the tactical station aboard the Defiance II. Zephyrian heavy cruiser moving alone through the Vega corridor, designation ZFS Starbound. Crew complement approximately 800. Sarah studied the tactical display. The Starbound was one of Kethver's escort vessels, separated from the main fleet by several light-years. It was following a predictable route back to the Rigel system, unaware that human ships were already in position along its path. "Any other Confederacy vessels in the area?" Sarah asked. "Negative, Captain. The next nearest ship is 6 hours away." At maximum speed, Sarah nodded. This was exactly the kind of engagement that human tactics were designed for. One enemy ship, isolated from support, following a route that the humans had predicted hours in advance. The Starbound's crew probably did not even know they were at war. "All ships, this is Defiance Actual. Execute Hunter Protocol. Target is ZFS Starbound. Weapons free on my command." The human task force consisted of 5 ships, each one smaller than the Zephyrian cruiser but faster and more maneuverable. They approached from different directions, using the gravitational shadows of asteroids and gas clouds to mask their approach. The Starbound sensors would not detect them until it was too late to escape. The attack began with cyber warfare. Human hackers had spent months studying Zephyrian computer systems, learning their weaknesses and developing viruses specifically designed to target their networks. As the Starbound moved through space, its computers began to malfunction. Navigation systems started providing false readings. Weapons targeting became erratic. Communication equipment began broadcasting random signals that would confuse any rescue attempts. Most importantly, the ship's automated distress beacon was disabled before it could send word of the attack. "Sir," the Starbound's communications officer reported to his captain, "we are experiencing system failures across multiple departments. Engineering says it looks like some kind of computer virus." Captain Zethmos, a veteran Zephyrian officer with over 2 centuries of experience, frowned at his displays. "Run full diagnostic protocols and increase sensor sweeps to maximum range. I do not like coincidences." But the diagnostics revealed nothing, because human computer viruses were designed to hide from Zephyrian security systems. The hackers who created them had studied captured Confederacy technology for months, learning how their networks operated and how to move through them. Undetected. The first kinetic strike hit the Starbound's engine section without warning. A chunk of dense metal, accelerated to incredible speed by human railguns, punched through the ship's energy shields like they were not even there. The projectile tore through 3 decks before exploding inside the main reactor housing. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the Zephyrian ship as power fluctuated and artificial gravity failed in several sections. The crew, trained for combat against energy weapons and exotic matter attacks, had no experience dealing with simple kinetic impacts that could penetrate their most advanced defenses. "Damage report," Captain Zethmos shouted over the noise. "Engine room is venting atmosphere," his damage control officer replied. "Main reactor is operating at 30% capacity. We have lost artificial gravity on decks 7 through 12. Where did that attack come from?" "I want firing solutions on the enemy vessels immediately." But the human ships were already moving to new positions, using the debris from their first attack to mask their locations. Zephyrian sensors, designed to detect the energy signatures of Confederacy vessels, could not track ships that operated on completely different principles. The second attack came from a different direction. This time it was a spread of smaller projectiles that struck the Starbound's shield generators. The impacts were precisely calculated to disrupt the harmonic frequencies that maintained the ship's defensive systems. Within seconds, the massive cruiser was flying through space with no protection except its hull armor. "Shields are down," reported the tactical officer. "I cannot get them back online. The frequency generators have been destroyed." Captain Zethmos realized that his ship was being systematically dismantled by an enemy he could not see or fight back against. "All hands, prepare for emergency jump to hyperspace. We need to reach the fleet and warn them about human capabilities." But human engineers had anticipated this tactic. The computer virus that had infected the Starbound systems included a subroutine specifically designed to prevent hyperspace jumps. When the navigation officer tried to activate the faster-than-light drive, nothing happened. "Sir, hyperspace systems are not responding." The computer is showing green lights across all systems, but the drive will not engage. The third attack targeted the ship's communication array. Human missiles, simple chemical rockets that barely registered on Zephyrian sensors, struck the transmission equipment and destroyed it completely. The starbound was now deaf, blind, and unable to call for help. Captain Sarah Chun watched the tactical display as her ships moved into final attack positions. The Zephyrian cruiser was helpless, drifting through space with damaged engines and no shields. Its crew was probably wondering what kind of enemy could destroy such a powerful vessel without ever showing themselves. "All ships, target the bridge section," Sarah commanded. "End this quickly." The final barrage came from all 5 human vessels simultaneously. Kinetic projectiles struck the starbound's command center from multiple directions, turning the bridge into twisted metal and venting atmosphere. The massive Zephyrian warship, which had terrorized human space for months, died without firing a single shot in its own defense. "Target destroyed," Torres reported. "No survivors detected." Sarah felt no satisfaction from the victory. 800 Zephyrian crew members had just died, but their deaths would not bring back Marcus Webb or the other humans killed in the attack on the original Defiance. This was not about revenge anymore. It was about teaching the galaxy that humanity would not be pushed around. "Set course for Rendezvous Point Alpha," she ordered, "and transmit engagement data to Earth Command. They need to know these tactics are working." The destruction of the starbound followed the same pattern as dozens of other attacks over the previous months. Human ships would appear without warning, destroy their targets with weapons that Confederacy technology could not defend against, and vanish before reinforcements arrived. The attacks followed no predictable pattern and seemed to target vessels almost at random. But there was a pattern, one that only became clear when analyzed by Earth's military intelligence computers. Every ship that disappeared was somehow connected to Admiral Kethver's command structure. Supply vessels that supported his fleet, communication relays that carried his orders, patrol ships that provided security for his operations. The humans were not attacking randomly. They were systematically destroying Kethver's ability to command and control his forces. They were isolating him from the rest of the Confederacy fleet, cutting his supply lines and eliminating his support network. Admiral Kethver began to realize what was happening when his weekly status reports to command started going unanswered. Communication relays that should have carried his messages had been destroyed. Supply convoys that should have arrived with fresh provisions and ammunition never appeared. Patrol vessels that should have reported their positions simply vanished. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported during a briefing aboard the Eternal Glory, "we have lost contact with 17 ships over the past month. All were vessels assigned to support our operations." Kethver studied the tactical displays showing the locations where his ships had disappeared. The attacks seemed random, but he was beginning to see a pattern that chilled his silver blood. "They are hunting us," he said quietly. "The humans are not fighting a war. They are conducting an extermination campaign." The realization that he had become the prey instead of the hunter was deeply disturbing to a being who had spent centuries believing in Zephyrian superiority. The humans were using tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare, striking from ambush and showing no mercy to defeated enemies. But Admiral Kethver was about to learn that the systematic destruction of his support network was only the beginning of humanity's campaign. Captain Chun and her strike force had been tracking his movements for weeks, studying his patrol routes and identifying the perfect location for a final confrontation. The Kepler Nebula, where this war had begun with the murder of 12 human crew members, would be where it ended. Sarah Chun had chosen the location deliberately. Kethver would die in the same place where he had killed her friends, where he had stolen humanity's greatest discovery and left them to die in the radiation storms. The trap was already set. Human ships were moving into position around the nebula, their crews preparing for the most important battle in their species' history. Advanced reconnaissance drones were monitoring every approach route ready to detect. The moment when Kethver's fleet entered the kill zone, Earth's hackers had prepared their final virus, a program designed to cripple every Zephyrian ship simultaneously. Human engineers had positioned kinetic weapon platforms throughout the nebula, turning the entire region into a killing field. Most importantly, Captain Chun had prepared a message for Admiral Kethver, words that would explain exactly why he was about to die. The hunt was almost over. Soon, the galaxy would learn what happened to those who shed human blood and thought they could escape the consequences. The ancient races would discover that age meant nothing when facing an enemy that fought not for conquest or glory, but for justice. Admiral Kethver was about to receive an education in human warfare that would be his last. Admiral Kethver's remaining fleet consisted of only 3 ships now. The mighty task force that had once terrorized human space was reduced to his flagship, the Eternal Glory, and 2 escort vessels. Weeks of hit-and-run attacks had destroyed the rest of his command, leaving him isolated and desperate. The admiral stood on his bridge, staring at the swirling gases of the Kepler Nebula on the main view screen. Intelligence reports suggested that the humans had established a base somewhere inside the radiation storms. It was the perfect hiding place for a species that seemed to prefer ambush tactics over honorable combat. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving a transmission from inside the nebula. It is coming from the human ship Defiance." Kethver felt his silver skin grow cold. The Defiance was the ship he had attacked months ago, the vessel whose crew he had killed when they refused to surrender their archaeological discovery. He had thought that ship was destroyed. "Put it on screen," he ordered. Captain Sarah Chun appeared on the view screen, and Kethver was surprised by what he saw. The human female looked older than he remembered, with lines of stress around her eyes and gray streaks in her dark hair. But there was something else in her expression that made the Zephyrian admiral uncomfortable. She looked like a predator that had finally cornered its prey. "Admiral Kethver," Sarah said in a calm, steady voice, "I am Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earth ship Defiance 2. You murdered my crew. You stole our discovery. You left us to die in this nebula. Now you are going to pay for those crimes." Kethver straightened his uniform and tried to project the authority of his rank. "Captain Chun, you are in violation of Confederacy law by attacking military vessels. Surrender immediately, and you will be treated according to the rules of civilized warfare." Sarah's expression did not change. "You forfeited any claim to civilized treatment when you opened fire on a peaceful exploration vessel. You want to see how a young species fights? You are about to learn." The transmission ended. A moment later, Kethver's sensors detected multiple ships emerging from the nebula's radiation storms. Human vessels appeared on all sides of his small fleet, moving with the coordinated precision of pack hunters closing in for the kill. "Battle stations," Kethver ordered. "All ships, prepare for combat. Target the largest human vessel and fire at will." The Eternal Glory's weapon systems powered up, exotic matter cannons charging with deadly energy. The ship's targeting computers locked onto the Defiance 2 and prepared to fire. But when the weapons officer pressed the firing stud, nothing happened. "Sir, weapons are not responding," he reported in confusion. "All systems show ready, but the cannons will not fire." At the same moment, similar reports came from the 2 escort vessels. Every Zephyrian ship in the small fleet found itself unable to use its weapons, even though all systems appeared to be functioning normally. "Computer virus," Kethver realized with growing horror. "They have infected our systems." Sarah Chun's voice came over the communication system again, but this time it was being broadcast on all frequencies so that every Confederacy ship in the area could hear her words. "People of the galaxy," she began, "you are about to witness the execution of Admiral Kethver and his crew. This being murdered 12 peaceful explorers and stole scientific discoveries that belonged to humanity. He attacked without warning and left survivors to die in space. This is what happens to those who shed human blood." The first human attack came not from the ships surrounding Kethver's fleet, but from weapons platforms hidden throughout the nebula, kinetic projectiles launched from dozens of locations, converging on the Zephyrian vessels from every direction. The admiral watched in horror as chunks of metal moving at incredible speeds tore through his ships, hulls like they were made of paper. The escort vessel Bright Star was the first to die. A railgun projectile the size of a telephone pole punched through its reactor housing, causing a cascade failure that tore the ship apart from the inside. The explosion lit up the nebula for several seconds before fading into scattered debris. The second escort, Silver Wind, tried to flee but found its engines would not respond to commands. The human virus had infected every system, turning the ship into a helpless target. Missile strikes from multiple human vessels destroyed its hull in a matter of minutes, venting atmosphere and crew into the deadly radiation of the nebula. Kethver found himself alone, surrounded by 50 human warships, aboard a flagship that could not fight back or run away. His crew looked to him for orders, but there was nothing he could do. The humans had planned this execution with surgical precision. "Admiral," his tactical officer said quietly, "we could try to surrender, request quarter under Confederacy law." Kethver looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were beings who had served the Zephyrian Empire faithfully for decades. They did not deserve to die because of his mistakes. But he also knew that the humans had not come here to take prisoners. Captain Chion's image appeared on his viewscreen again. This time she was not alone. Standing beside her were holographic projections of the 12 crew members who had died aboard the original Defiance. The ghosts of the dead had come to witness their killer's judgment. "You have something that belongs to us," Sarah said. "The data you stole from the Forerunner ship, return it now, and your crew might survive what comes next." Kethver felt a spark of hope. Perhaps there was a way to save his people, even if he could not save himself. "The data is in our main computer, but our systems are locked by your virus. We cannot access it." "We will handle that," Sarah replied. "Prepare to be boarded." Human soldiers in armored spacesuits began cutting through the Eternal Glory's hull with plasma torches. They moved with military precision, securing key areas of the ship and establishing control over critical systems. Within an hour, they had reached the bridge. The soldiers were led by a human female who introduced herself as Major Patricia Santos. She was carrying a portable computer designed to interface with Zephyrian systems. "Admiral Kethver," she said, "you will provide the access codes for your ship's data storage. Refuse, and we will execute your crew one by one until you comply." The Zephyrian admiral looked around his bridge at his officers. These beings had followed him into this trap, trusting in his leadership and the superiority of their technology. Now they would pay the price for his arrogance. "The codes are in my personal files," he said quietly. "I will transfer them to you." Major Santos connected her device to the Zephyrian computer system and began downloading everything. Not just the Forerunner data, but technical specifications for Confederacy ships, military plans, communication protocols, and strategic intelligence. The humans were taking everything they could use against their enemies. When the download was complete, Sarah Chun appeared on the bridge in person. She looked around at the advanced Zephyrian technology, the elegant displays and sophisticated control systems, then her eyes settled on Admiral Kethver. "Your crew will be transferred to escape pods and released," she said. "They will be picked up by Confederacy vessels and returned home. But you, Admiral, will not be leaving this ship." Kethver straightened his uniform one last time. "I am prepared to face the consequences of my actions. But tell me, Captain Chun, what do you hope to accomplish with this war? Do you think killing me will change anything?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment, looking at the being who had started this conflict by murdering her friends. When she spoke, her words were broadcast across the galaxy for all to hear. "You called us young," she said. "You were right. We are young enough to believe in things like justice, progress, and earning respect instead of demanding it. This war was never about conquest or revenge. It was about teaching the galaxy that age means nothing without wisdom, and wisdom means nothing without action." She gestured to the tactical displays showing the positions of human ships throughout the nebula. "In the past year, we have destroyed 47 Confederacy vessels using technology that your ancient civilizations considered primitive. We have shown that innovation beats tradition, that hunger beats complacency, and that justice beats bureaucracy. Sarah turned back to Kethver. But the real lesson comes next. Instead of keeping the Forerunner data for ourselves, we are going to give it to every species in the galaxy. Every civilization, including our enemies, will have access to the greatest archaeological discovery in galactic history. The Admiral stared at her in disbelief. You would share such valuable information with those who have fought against you? That is what young species do, Sarah replied. We believe that knowledge should be shared, not hoarded. We believe that progress comes from cooperation, not domination. We believe that the future belongs to those who build it together, not those who try to own it alone. She activated her communication device. Earth Command, this is Captain Chun. Execute Protocol 7. Broadcast the Forerunner data on all frequencies. Every language, every network in the galaxy. Make sure everyone receives it. As the data began transmitting across space, Sarah looked at Admiral Kethver one last time. You wanted to know what we hope to accomplish? We are showing the galaxy what leadership looks like. Real leadership does not come from age or power. It comes from wisdom, courage, and the willingness to do what is right even when it costs you everything. The execution was swift. Kethver died knowing that his actions had created an enemy that would change the galaxy forever. His crew was released as promised, picked up by Confederacy rescue ships, and returned home to tell the story of what they had witnessed. The Forerunner data spread across galactic communication networks like wildfire. Every species, from the most ancient to the newest, received complete access to technology that could revolutionize their understanding of physics, engineering, and interstellar travel. The information that the Confederacy had tried to hoard for the oldest civilizations was now available to everyone. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. 17 species formally requested to leave the Confederacy and join humanity's new alliance. They called it the Progressive Coalition, and its founding principle was simple. Age means nothing without wisdom, and wisdom means nothing without action. The coalition's charter, written by human diplomats and signed by representatives from dozens of worlds, established new rules for galactic civilization. Technology would be shared freely. Scientific discoveries would benefit all species. Conflicts would be resolved through negotiation, not through claims of ancient privilege. Most importantly, membership in the coalition was based on merit and contribution, not on how long a species had existed. Young civilizations with new ideas were welcomed as equals to ancient races with vast experience. Innovation was valued as much as tradition. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler Nebula, Captain Sarah Chun stood before the first meeting of the Coalition Council. The chamber was filled with beings from across the galaxy, all united in their belief that the future belonged to those brave enough to build it together. The old galaxy was ruled by fear, she told the assembled delegates. Fear of change, fear of new ideas, fear of losing power to younger species. We offer something different. We offer hope. The Progressive Coalition grew rapidly as more species abandoned the stagnant Confederacy for a future built on cooperation and innovation. Within a year, the new alliance included over 100 worlds and was expanding faster than anyone had thought possible. The galaxy learned that sometimes being young is not a weakness, but the most dangerous advantage of all. Young species are hungry, innovative, and unafraid of change. They fight for what they believe in and refuse to accept that age automatically grants authority. Admiral Kethver had intended to put humanity in its place as a minor species that needed guidance from its elders. Instead, he had created a new order where wisdom mattered more than age, where justice mattered more than tradition, and where the future belonged to those brave enough to reach for it. The stars themselves seemed brighter in the new galaxy that humanity had helped to create.